Hello and welcome. Today we are diving into a really important G20 report. And it makes a pretty bold claim. The extreme inequality we're seeing across the globe, it's not some accident of history. The report says it's a choice. And importantly, it's a choice that can be unmade. So let's get into it.
Okay, let's just start with this one image because it really tells you almost everything you need to know. Since the year 2000, for every $100 of new wealth created on this planet, 41 of those dollars went straight to the richest 1%. Now, you might be asking, what about the entire bottom half of humanity? Well, they got just $1. That's not just a gap, that is a massive chasm. And this right here is the absolute core message of the entire report. What the authors are saying is that this situation we're in, it isn't natural. It's not like gravity, just some law of the universe. It's a system that was built one decision at a time. And the hopeful part is, if it was built, it can also be rebuilt. So to really get a handle on what this all means, we first need to understand the staggering, almost unbelievable scale of this gap between the ultra-rich and, well, pretty much everyone else. Now, here's a crucial point the report really drills down on. It's not just about your paycheck, right? It's about what you own. Think of it like this. Your income is the water flowing into a bucket every month, but your wealth, that's all the water that's already in the bucket. And the report makes it crystal clear that some people's buckets are just unimaginably bigger than others. And this chart just puts that concentration into crazy perspective. I want you to picture 10 people in a room, okay? And they represent the entire world's population. Just one of those people owns almost 3/4 of everything in that room. The other 9 people, they have to share what's left. That's the world we're living in, according to this report. So let's put some real money on this to see the impact. Since the year 2000, the average person, just the average person in that top 1%, has seen their personal wealth grow by $1.3 million. And what about the average person in the bottom half of humanity? Well, their wealth grew by just $585. Just let that sink in for a second. For every single dollar of new wealth that the person at the bottom gained, the person at the top gained over 2,000.
So you might be thinking, okay, the numbers are big, but why does this really matter? The report argues this isn't about envy or even just fairness. This incredible concentration of wealth has real, tangible, and often negative consequences for all of us. First up, it's a major threat to democracy. The report's argument is that when wealth gets this concentrated, it pretty much inevitably buys political influence, through things like lobbying, campaign donations, owning media outlets, and all of this erodes public trust and makes democratic backsliding way more likely. Second, and this might surprise you, it's actually bad for the economy. The old trickle-down theory gets pretty thoroughly debunked here. The report shows that when a huge chunk of the population can't afford to buy things, and when you have all this wasted talent because people can't get a good education, the whole economic engine just starts to sputter. Third, it's a huge roadblock to tackling existential crises like climate change. The consumption habits and the investments of a tiny, tiny elite are driving a wildly disproportionate share of global emissions. Get this, the report states the richest 1% emit as much carbon as the poorest 2/3 of humanity combined. That is just staggering. And finally, it just tears at the very fabric that holds us together. The report finds that in societies that are more unequal, people tend to trust each other less, they have worse health outcomes, and it's a lot harder to get ahead no matter how hard you work. It really just erodes that sense that we're all in this together. Okay, so if the report is right and this level of inequality isn't just inevitable, how did we get here? Well, the authors argue it was a problem created by design through a whole series of very specific policy choices. This timeline tells the story of what they call a great reversal. After World War II, for decades, the gap between rich and poor was actually shrinking in many parts of the world. But then, around the 1980s, everything changed. A new economic philosophy took over, one that said the best way to grow the economy was to cut taxes on the wealthy, deregulate big business, and sell off public assets. And inequalities started to climb. And it wasn't just one single policy, it was a whole toolkit. On the economic side, you had taxes on corporations and the wealthy being slashed while the power of unions was weakened. And at the same time, politically, the report describes a capture of the system where powerful interests could essentially help write the rules in their own favor. But here's the thing, the report doesn't just diagnose the problem and leave us there. A huge part of its mission is to offer a comprehensive blueprint for how we could actually start to rewrite those rules. So it proposes this big four-part plan for systemic change. First, fix the global tax system so massive corporations and the ultra-rich pay their fair share. Second, rewrite the rules of trade so they benefit everyone, not just a select few. Third, invest massively in public services that create opportunity, like education and healthcare. And fourth, create a fair system to resolve the debt crises that are crushing so many developing countries. Now, here's a really fascinating proposal. They want to create a brand new global body called the International Panel on Inequality. I want you to think of it kind of like the IPCC for climate change, an independent scientific body that provides clear, unbiased data and analysis to help policymakers really understand the problem and hopefully make better, more informed decisions.
So, the final message here is actually one of cautious optimism. The report concludes that we are not doomed to this future. The problems are huge, yes, but they are solvable. The tools are actually there. What's been missing, they argue, is the political will to use them.
And so we're left with this final, really powerful question that the report basically poses to all of us. If inequality is, in fact, a choice and not just some unavoidable force of nature, then the critical question that's hanging over the future of our global economy and our societies is, what choice will be made next?